Hi kids, this is Auntie Mila. I'm so glad you came by to see me today. And our story is called Secret Jewels. Secret, a big secret, a hidden treasure. Our verse talks about that. It's Matthew 13:44. And it says, "Again, the kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and hid. And for joy over it, he goes and sells everything that he has and buys the field." That's a parable Jesus told when he was here on this earth. Well, this story happened a long time ago now, like over 900 years ago, in the country of Spain, when the Moors ruled Spain. There was a little shepherd family. There was Jose. He was a father, and his wife's name was Carmina, and the son's name was Pedro, and he had two little sisters. And every day, Jose took his son, who was 15 years old, and says, "Come, you have to help me take care of the sheep." And he would go out into the pasture and take care of the sheep. You know, I love sheep. They are so sweet. We used to have sheep. In fact, this sweater is from the wool from our sheep. Yes. And you know what I like about the sweater? It smells like our sheep. I love that smell. I used to go and feed them alfalfa, and they loved eating alfalfa. And so he had a lot of sheep, but he didn't own the land. And Abdul is the owner that owned the land, and he was mean. And after a year or so, he'd go to Jose. He says, "No, you need to pay me more rent for this land." So he'd have to pay more rent. And they didn't have very much money at all. He took care of his sheep, and he would shear the sheep, and then they had wool, and then they could sell the wool and get money. And he took care of the sheep every day. And one day they were out in the fields, and one little lamb started running off, and Pedro went running after it, because they had to keep them together, because they didn't want the wolves to get them, or coyotes or lions or something else. And so he went running after him. He was following him, and all of a sudden, the sheep disappeared. Just disappeared. What happened? He went over there, and there was like a dugout, like a cave-in of earth. And there was a little sheep, and so he called his dad. Dad, come help me. And so they had to go, and the little sheep was down going, "Bah, bah." And so he had to go down. The dad got in there and started hoisting the little sheep out, and said, "Pedro, here, get it." So he was pulling up the little sheep, and they got the little sheep out of that hole that he fell in. And he was talking to the little sheep. He said, "You must be careful where you go. You just fell in that hole." But the sheep was okay, wasn't hurt. But while Jose was down in there, he looked around and he said, "Hey, this looks mysterious." And he looked, and it was almost like a cave, because it was overgrown with bushes and grass. But he kept looking, and just kind of went. And he thought, "Where does this go?" And he kept looking, and he said, "Hey, Pedro, this is really strange." And they kept digging and dug out the gravel and the grass and everything. It went way back in there. And they went back in there, and they started digging around, and they were knocking, and they heard something sort of like a hollow sound. He said, "This doesn't sound like ground. You knock on ground, you don't get a hollow sound, sort of an echo sound." And so they started digging, and they said, "Hey, this is something. Look, this is a lid." And they kept digging, and they brought out a box, an old box. And they said, "Well, what is it?" And they shook it. It was heavy. They had no idea what was in it. And they thought, "This is really something." And they tried to open it. There was no opening. It was locked. And they tried, what is it? It was just an old box. It looked, on the outside, just was rusty and old. And Jose said, you know what? We're going to put this right back. So they put it back, put grass on top, gravel. He says, tomorrow when we bring the sheep out, I'm going to bring my tools, and we're going to open that box and see what's in it. And then they said, you know, it's getting late. We probably should take the sheep back home, put them in the fold, give them water to drink, and put them in the fold, the barn. And so that's what they did. They walked the sheep back. While they were walking along, Jose said, Pedro, I want you to promise me something. Absolutely promise me something. Pedro said, what is it, Dad? He says that you don't tell anyone what we found, not even your mother. And Pedro said, okay, I won't tell anyone. And so they took the sheep back, gave them water to drink, put them in the barn, locked them in, safe. They went in, and Mother had supper for them, had a nice evening, went to bed. The next morning, they were up early, and they had to take the sheep back out to the pasture, but this time Jose took some tools along because they wanted to know what was in that box. And so he took some tools along, and they went back, took the sheep way back out there to the pasture, and the sheep were eating and eating. And they went under there. They thought, I wonder if the box is still there. They went down into that little dugout, and they reached way back in. Sure enough, the box was still there. They brought it out, and this time Jose had his tools, and so he was working and working and working and working, and they finally got it open. And they opened the box, and they could not believe it. There were gold coins, there were jewels, rubies, and diamonds, and all kinds of precious stones. And they looked at that, and they said, this is amazing. We have found a fortune. And they said, what shall we do? And then the father said, now I know what to do. And they closed the lid, and they put it back in there, dug it back in there, put gravel on top and grass, and put everything up over it. And he said, now son, don't tell a soul. Don't tell your mother, your sisters, your friends. Don't tell anyone, because we have got to buy this field. So they took their sheep home at the end of the day, a little early because they were anxious to get home. And after supper, he told Mom, he says, well, I think I'm going to sell our sheep. She says, sell our sheep? Why? Well, because I want to buy that field, because we need to own some land. We don't own any land. We're just renting this house. We're renting the field. We need the field, and I want to buy it. So if I sell the sheep, if I sell all the sheep, we'll have enough money to buy that one piece of ground from Abdul. And she said, no, don't sell a sheep. That's our income. Because every year we shear them, cut their wool, and don't sell the sheep. Please don't sell the sheep, please. And he says, I think we're going to. So he went and he sold all the sheep. And he took the money and he took it to Abdul. He said, I sold my sheep because I want to buy a piece of land, because we don't own any land, and I want our own land so we can build a house and have a life. And Abdul said, well, what field do you want? He says, well, I'd like the field where we usually pasture our sheep. And he said, well, how much money do you have? He said, well, I sold all of our sheep, and this is the money I have. And Abdul looked at it and said, well, that's not enough money. That piece of land is worth a whole lot more. I'm sorry, that is not enough. I'm sorry. And so he was very discouraged and went back home, and he said, well, Abdul said that that's not enough money. And so I don't know what to do. I'm thinking. I guess we'll have to sell our furniture. Mother said, no, not our furniture. What are we going to do without furniture? Jose said, I'm sorry, I think we have to. So he went to town and he found someone that buys furniture. And they said, yep, we'll buy your furniture for this amount of money. He said, okay. So they brought the ox carts and came and hauled all the furniture out. just about all the furniture. And Carmina, the wife, there goes my furniture. My husband's gone mad. And she went to the neighbor and she said, my husband's just gone mad. He sold all his sheep. And now he sold all the furniture. I don't know what to do next. And so Jose got all the money from the furniture and he put it together with all the money from the sheep and he went to Abdul. He said, well, now I have enough money to buy the land. Here's all the money from the sheep and all the money from my furniture. Here, this is the money. Abdul looked at him and says, I'm sorry, that's not enough money. That land is worth a lot. Jose thought, oh no, now what? And he went back home and he was thinking and thinking and thinking. And he didn't know what to do. He said, I'm not missing very much. He went home and he told his wife, well, we're going to have to sell our clothes. You can keep, everyone can keep one piece of clothes, but all the other clothes we're going to sell. Husband, you've gone mad. You've lost your mind. Sell our clothes? I've never heard of such a thing. He says, dear wife, you're going to have to trust me, but we have to buy this land. And so he gathered all the clothes, and the wife was crying, my clothes, those are my clothes. Oh, he's selling all my clothes. Oh. He took all the clothes, and he took them to the market, and he got good prices for them because they were nice clothes. He got good prices. And he put it together with everything else, and he went to Abdul. And Abdul said, so now how much money do you have? He says, sir, here's all the money I have from the sheep, from all of our furniture, from our clothes. This is the amount we have. Abdul said, well, that's better. Let's go find a lawyer and we'll write up the papers. So they went and found a lawyer, and the lawyer sat down. He wrote everything up. He wrote the price that Jose was paying, and he made it official, and he gave the paper to Jose. And Abdul said, well, I got my money. You can have the field. So he went back home and he told his wife, look, 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 this is the deed to the field. I bought the field. It's ours. It's nobody else's and no one can charge us rent for it. It's ours. And the wife, she wasn't real impressed because she had no furniture, no sheep, no clothes, and she wasn't impressed. He said, wait, dear wife, pretty soon you're going to be the happiest woman in Spain. That would be the day. I don't believe it. I like my clothes. And so Jose was so happy that the land was his. He said, Pedro, come with me. And he got the basket. And they went out into the field, and they went right to that spot. And they started digging, 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 digging. Sure enough, there it was. And they opened it, and the sun setting on the hills shone on all of the jewels and the gold. And they said, it's ours. And they closed it, and they picked it up, and they put it in the basket, and they covered it. And then they walked back home. And it was getting close to evening. He reminded Pedro, don't say a thing to your mother, to no one. And he said, Pedro, we have to leave very early in the morning. We're going to move. We're going to leave Seville. And so they went home, and they had a little supper, and then they went to bed. The next morning, very early in the morning, Jose, the father, got up. And he woke up Pedro, and he woke up his wife. And he said, wife, I want you to be very quiet. He says, I have something very important to tell you. She says, what is it? I'm so tired. He says, shh, we have to leave town right now. Leave town? He says, shh. He says, please, wife, trust me one more time and you will be the happiest woman in Spain. And she thought, get up early. The sun isn't even up. He says, it's starting. just pack just what you need, and we are going to leave. We'll wake up the girls. He went and woke up Pedro. He told the girls to get dressed. And the wife didn't know what else to do because he had sold the sheep, he had sold the clothes, he sold the furniture. She thought she might as well go along with him. So she gathered a little bit of food together and her clothes, a few bags. They did have a donkey or two. They got on the donkeys. And Pedro and Jose took the basket and they started clip-clopping out of town. Clip-clopping. And you know what? His wife, I'm afraid, didn't have a very good attitude. She was sitting there, I can't believe this. I can't believe this. I'm really following this crazy man out of town, leaving all my friends, all my clothes I had to sell. I can't believe it. She was sitting there and she thought, well, I'll just go along with it. I don't know what else to do. And they clip-clop, clip-clop, clip-clop out of town very quietly. And they kept going. The sun came up. And they stopped and ate a little breakfast. And then they kept going. They traveled all day long. By the next evening, they were camping. They were going from Seville. They were going north, straight up north. And they were traveling and traveling. By the next evening, he was sitting there around the little campfire. And he says, wife, I have something to show you. And he opened the basket and the box and opened the box. And she went, where did you get that? Did you steal it? He says, no. He says, it was in the land that I bought. It's ours. And she went, are those jewels? Diamonds? They look like diamonds. I've never seen diamonds. I've never seen jewels. Are those real gold coins and silver? She said, I've never seen anything like that. I've just heard of things. He says, wife, we are going north. We have to leave this town. And so she could hardly sleep that night. The next day they traveled and they kept traveling. They went clear up to north part of Spain. They went to Santiago. That's on the coast, west part. And they got there and they looked around and they found a pretty little farm. They bought the farm. And guess what? They had a house and he bought furniture for his wife. And he bought her some more clothes. She was so happy. She didn't know what to do. And they had a little farm, and you know what? Those jewels took care of them, their life, and even their children. You know what? That story is just like the story in the Bible. He sold everything he had for the great prize. And you know, that's how it is with us. We need to put everything into loving Jesus, even if that means give up anything or everything for Jesus. Yes. You know what? I'd like to have a prayer before we close. Dearest Jesus, thank you for this story. Lord, it reminds us of the story in the Bible. Dear Lord, we love you, and Lord, help us to give up everything for you. For Jesus' sake, amen.